So, Amajit, shall we start the interview?
Sure.
So, could you introduce yourself?
Yeah, thank you for asking. My name is Amarjit. I'm having 7+ years of experience. Currently, I'm working for the Java development. So the technology which I use like Java with a Spring Boot microservices, a Spring Cloud component as a backend. Front end I have Angular 9. Also I have a good experience in AWS cloud services. So most of the services I use for the development and monitor the application in AWS. Coming for the database, I have good experience in Mongo and Oracle. Mongo is a NoSQL, Oracle is a SQL. Also, I have a good experience in DevOps, like some of the tools I use for the development, like Apache, Maven, Jenkins, Jira, GitHub, ELK, Splunks, and all. So these all are the used for the development and monitor the applications while we are developing any Spring Boot microservices application. Apart from this, I have also good experience in the different domain where I worked like banking, telecom, e-commerce, and health insurance. So currently I'm working for the health insurance domain. There we are doing customization implementation based on the client requirement. So mostly we have a microservices. So microservice we need to develop. So the project is based on health insurance. So health insurance is nothing but is a portal like where we customer will come in the portal and take any type of insurance, whatever insurance you want. So once you will take the insurance, internally we will manage multiple microservices operations. Like once customer will initiate the order, so that order will be go for the particular store. So a particular store, which type of a store, where nearby location, and what type of facility need to be provide the particular customer. After that we will go with the payments. So that before payment we need to have to calculate the promo operation, if customer is applicable for the particular promo or offers and all, so that we can re-affiliate for this promo code and all. After that we'll have a like notifications, so that customer will get the notifications and all. So these are multiple microservices which need to be performed while customer is initiating any order. So internally we will work on the API call. So that API call will happen based on the REST template and Kafka, so that we are depends on the requirement we need to perform. So my role and responsibility here, we are following agile. So based on agile, whatever the sprint task will be defined, we need to work on that. So here we are following based on the Jira. So there will be some Jira tasks that need to be performed based on the sprint task. Yeah, so on daily basis, what we are doing, my role and responsibility, like developing API applications to communicate from one service to another services. Also, we need to communicate it with Kafka template. We need to create a Kafka template which will be perform the operations from the asynchronous communications from multiple clients. Apart from this, while we are developing any microservices applications, then we'll have a deployment. So once it will go for the deployment, then we'll have a call. So that call will be taken care all those, like what are the changes we have done before the micros different type of environment that is going for the production deployment. So we have to check all those configuration changes, request validations, input request, output request, and all, and also what type of security we enable. So that type of things we need to assure, so that our productions deployments and all will go smooth. So that type of work I'm doing daily basis. Also we are handling the team, like once the team members will be there and new requirement will come, we need to gather the information, and then we will collaborate each other, divide the task and work each others like that.
Okay, thanks for your introduction, Amajit. So moving to the Java. So, can you explain about what is the solid principles in Java?
Solid principles is used for the while we are developing any applications, we need to take in care of the solid principles, like is like open extension, open for extension, close for modifications, list of substitutions, and like and like a dependency in version of control, like that. So like suppose if you are developing any applications, then what type of dependency, one classes is dependent on other interfaces or any other interface implementations, that we can check. And we need to like mostly use the code as a close for modifications. There is no changes and all will happen, repetitions type of work we will do. And like we have a inheritance in encapsulations, or in a in interface modifications which we are doing, that we have to based on the solid principle we will applicable.
Okay, it's fine. So, which are the design patterns have you worked till now?
Mostly depends on the requirements. In microservices we use Saga, API, gateway, and CQRS and all. But in core Java, we have a different type of requirement like singleton, MVC, DAO, and builders, factory design patterns I work.
Mm-hmm. Okay. What is immutable? Why string is immutable in Java?
Yeah, string is immutable in Java because a string will be have if you'll go for internal implementations, then you will not like a string how
Mm-hmm.
immutable. So is
Mm-hmm.
used while we are storing the data in a string, that will be go for the constant mode. So that constant will check if data is already there, that will be refer the same data, else it will be call this. And if data is not there, then we will call. So immutable, we can't change the value, and we'll refer the same. So why? Because if you go for the internal implementation of a string class, so that string class create as a class as a final, and in that we'll have only getter method. There is no setter method is there. Constructor also is a private static, and their all attribute is a private static. So that we can create a class as a immutable class. So that's why string is a immutable class.
Okay, it's fine. So, what is concurrent modification exception? When we will receive concurrent modification exception in Java?
Yeah, concurrent modifications exceptions will come like suppose if multiple thread is communicating simultaneously, and then there is some communications which happen and that is not responding properly. In that time, some of the thread will be not modified properly. In that cases, we will have a concurrent modification exception. So, for that situations, we have a collection framework. In collection framework, new features which has came like concurrent modifications. Concurrent hash map modifications, so that while we are trying to for that and some of the thread is not updating or not implementing properly, in that cases we need to resolve this concurrent modification exception.
It's fine. What is synchronization in Java?
Synchronization is used for multiple thread is want to execute the process.
Mm-hmm.
So at a time only one thread will be executed, another thread will be in waiting conditions. Once a thread will be completed, then b thread will be worked. Else
Mm-hmm.
how this will happen, then we'll have a thread life cycle that will be have a notify all wait conditions. Through that, other thread will notify that a thread has been released, now you can start the work. So single thread at a time it will work, that is called synchronizes.
Mm-hmm. Have you work on multi-threading? Multi?
Multi-threading mostly I used in thread lifecycle, join fork,
Mm-hmm.
and then deadlock situations. This
Mm-hmm.
type of things I worked.
Mm-hmm. So, how to avoid deadlock?
Uh, yeah, if you want to avoid the deadlock situation, like deadlock situations is at a time only one thread will be worked, other all conditions
Mm-hmm.
will be waiting conditions. Then once this will
Mm-hmm.
be notified, then this will be other thread will release, then other beast thread will be notified. So we can avoid the
Mm-hmm.
deadlock situation. In the how we will do, there are multiple ways, but in
Mm-hmm.
thread we can go for the asynchronous communications call. We will divide it in the separate thread pool.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Have you used the file write log, read log?
Yeah, write log, read log mostly I use for the framework is a Splunk or ELK. So that ELK will process Elastic Log Stack Kibana. So while we are writing any
Mm-hmm.
microservices, we will need to implement the CLK. So whatever the
Mm-hmm.
scenario will come or event will be triggered, then all the status logs will be generated in ELK. So through that we can search through the database operations. We can also UI interface through that we will search also by based on the timestamp, stem ID, spam ID, and
Mm-hmm.
trace ID. We will find it.
Mm-hmm. You work on Java 8, Amarjit.
Yeah.
So, which are the features have you used
Uh,
using?
yeah, Java 8 mostly I use in Lambda expressions, functional interface, datetime API,
Mm-hmm.
stream.
Mm-hmm.
These things I used and optional.
Mm-hmm.
Apart from this, many others also are there. Method reference, Java, Nesrum. and
Mhm.
JavaScript notations and all.
Mhm. Do you find any performance improvement in Java 8?
Yeah, while we used Steam API, we'll have a multiple
Mm-hmm.
inbuilt operations or methods are there based on the Lambda
Mm-hmm.
expressions we can use. And then whatever the things if you are using for Lambda expression, then code reusability, code line of code executions will be faster, and your time complexity, space complexity will be increased for that.
Okay. Have you used the suppliers or consumers interface of Java 8?
Yeah, depends on the requirement. We need to use supplier, producer, consumer,
Mm-hmm.
and function.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
supply a predicate also. The predicate is used for the either conditions check, either true, false, and all. And supplier
Mm-hmm.
will have a one output which will be supplied by the customer, and consumer will have a only one input, but function will have a input based on the return type. So we will provide the return types and all. So this type of things we will depends on the requirement while we are processing any data based on the stream API we will use this.
Okay, it's fine. So, what does auto configuration in Spring Boot, Amarji?
Yeah, auto configurations is like whatever the property file you are writing in this application.yaml property or application property file, there all the like database configurations, JWT security implementations or any other things, Kafka implementations and all. So that will be configured automatically. No need to do for manual do. So how it will happen while you are running the Spring Boot application, then main applications class will be load main file. So that main file is a at the rate spring boot application annotation which is annotated on the class level. So there we'll have a three annotations: class level as a spring auto configurations and component skin.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why this will be auto configurable all the property file.
Okay, okay, it's fine. So, have you work on REST API, design REST API? Have you
Yeah.
work on REST API?
Yes.
So, have you implemented any security around your REST endpoints?
Yeah.
Which HTTP protocols have you used around?
Mostly I use HTTP like get, post, put, delete, and patch in this.
Mm-hmm.
And the
Mm-hmm.
security implemented JWT Octa JWT tokens I used. So
Mm-hmm.
HTTP method as a get, post, put, delete will have a multiple
Mm-hmm.
HTTP status codes will be there, 400, 500, and 800. Through that we can
Mm-hmm.
like
How
successfully.
are you accessing a JWT token your REST API?
Yeah, while we need to communicate from one microservice to another microservices, so we
Mm-hmm.
need have a JWT token configuration class. So that configuration first you have to add the dependency in form.xml, create a
Mm-hmm.
configuration.java file there, and add the property file which will be related for the JWT. And after that we will check if users is logged in with the credentials for the particular website, then we have to validate is that user is valid or not with the database.
Mm-hmm.
Once it is valid, then we will create a token. So that token will have a for the particular time limit. Once he will
Mm-hmm.
validate with the tokens, then only users will communicate from one API to another API.
Well, how are you sending via in a HTTP call?
HTTP?
Yeah. So how are you sending that token? How
Yeah.
are you basically carrying token? I mean, through your code.
Yeah, so tokens will be like through your code. While we are creating configuration class of JWT, that will have a following round robin algorithm. Through that auto generated by the tokens. So once user will validate the tokens through the postman or maybe through the
No,
any.
no. I mean your REST. Let's say you have a REST API that is get endpoint. Okay. So you will have a token, right? So
Mhm.
you will validate the token there in your get API, right? So from
एक
which
बार कम
time
करके
you will
चला दीजिए ना, बंद कर
send
चला
the
के कम कर दीजिए पूरा.
mm,
हाँ.
how are you
Just a minute,
carrying
just a
the
minute.
token in get manager?
Huh? Yeah, so how we will validate the token? Sorry for that.
I mean, are you sending token in headers or how?
Yeah, yeah. On header will be this sending the better tokens will be there. So that better tokens will have a once users will be sending through that, then only he will be able to access.
Okay, okay, fine. Have you work on Hibernate, Spring Data, GPA library, Amarjit?
Yeah, Spring Data JPA. Yes.
Mm-hmm. So in Spring Data GPA library, so which are the repositories available?
Yeah, Spring Data JPA will have a multiple repositories available. Yes, JPA repository, CRUD repository, and others. So while you use CRUD repository, then we'll have a insert, update, delete operations which will be performed for the particular respective method. If you have a JPA repository interface extended, then in that cases we'll have a multiple method which we can execute like find all, find by ID, delete by ID, get. So like that, these type of operations we will perform.
Hmm. Okay, it's fine. Mhm. So have you work on microservices as well, Amarjit?
Yeah, yeah. Mostly I'm working in for the microservices with the Spring Boot deployment.
Hmm. So, so each microservice have a separate database or common database to all microservices? What is the scenario in your application, in your project?
Depends on the requirement of business logic. Like some of the cases we used the same instance of microservices, but some of the cases will have a different instance of microservices. Like we have a promo operation service. The promo operation service will use NoSQL's microservice, NoSQL's database, which will be take the promo code. So once the promo code will be executed for the particular day, the out of 3 days that will be valid. Once the expirations will be completed, then it will be deleted automatically. So there is no business logic which will be initiate or record for the transactions related. In that cases we used promo Mongo, and while we are using for the business logic to perform the operations, and we will generate the transactions, and that transactions will be dependent or for the future purpose. In that cases we used SQLs, so that SQLs will have a relational database communicate with the acid property and generate the transactions logic. So we will use Saga if you have a multiple microservices which need to be perform the operation, and then we will generate the transactions, either commit, rollback and all. So that cases we use for the Saga pattern.
Hmm. Okay. What is the role of API gateway?
API gateway is a cloud component, a Spring Cloud component. So while users or many, if UI component is communicating with our backend microservices, so before that, or any third party, so before that, communicating instead of microservices, will have a API gateway that is used for the security purpose. So they will send the data or request to the API gateway. API gateway will know like what type of microservice related request coming from the client, then they will redirect to the particular Eureka service registry or maybe particular microservices. So for the security purpose we have a gateway, so that gateway will take care all those things.
Okay, it's fine. So what is the CQRS design pattern microservices?
CQRS is used for this query,
Command query language.
yeah, command query language based on that. So while we executed multiple queries and to perform the business logic, so that I think we use for CQRS and all. I'm not sure, right?
Mm-hmm. Okay, so one general question: how to optimize the Java code?
There are multiple way to optimize in Java code. First we used, instead of that Java 7 another operations, we use Java 8, so that lambda functional interface and others steam API we can used. That is, instead of loop and all we used. While we are going for the solid principles, we will followed the structures,
Mm-hmm.
mostly use the design pattern concept, so that repetitions of task and all will be based on the different type of solid principles we will follow. like that. Create of exceptions while use exception handler advice, so that common type of exceptions will be taken care in the single class, like that.
Mm-hmm.
So there are multiples way we can optimize this once we will validate these
Mm-hmm.
all things.
Mm-hmm. Did you work on any complex issue? How did you complete it or
Yeah, one of
solve
the yeah
or
one of
pass?
the yes, one of the things I was working deployed in the client side, that client was have a 4 instance, and that 4 instance was deployed while if any
Oh.
development will happen, then all the instance will be deployed through the production sync up.
Mm-hmm.
So what will happen, like out of 4, 3 instance was working and 1 instance was not working in production. We have tested in all the scenario in different environment, every environment was working,
Mm-hmm.
but only the problem in production, 1 instance was not working. So what happened? There is a
Oh.
following patterns was there in round loading algorithm. So if load balancers will be there, so that load will be redirected to different instance. So some of the customers was raising, I am not able to work or do the this type of payment through this. So we understand why this is not happening, because of that is happening for the
Mm-hmm.
different instance. So that instance was not working properly.
Mm-hmm.
So client told like we need to suggestions or some suggestions or some of the like solutions for that. So many of the employee and colleague was working on the same things, because that production issues, no one was understanding, and even also I checked from my side and given the solutions, like while we deployed this application, that was on there was a server deployment. So on server deployment we seen like multiple jars will be there. Based on that jars, that will be taken care all. So there was a one jars as a bouncy castle jar that was not refreshed in all the microservice other instance. Bouncy castle jar was refreshed. So what we have seen, that was not refreshing while our jar file is running. In that time, that is
Mm-hmm.
not refreshing. So manually what we have given the suggestion, we have downloaded the authorized jar from this particular locations and given the suggestions. Then he has purchased or somewhere he has taken that, and after that this instance was working. Like there was some sync up issue was there that we analyze in this production side. So that we have
Okay,
found in
fine.
recently.
Yes, fine. Okay, so how to improve the performance of applications? So do you have any approach?
To improve the performance, yeah, performance. Uh, yeah, that also depends on the different requirement. Like if you want to improve the performance, then instead of like monolithic, we can go for the microservices deployment. Microservices will have increase the performance and all also, because the instance will be divided in the different sub microservices. Also, instead of this repetitions code and all loopings, we will remove. And common type of mostly we'll use design pattern, I think, so that they increase that. We'll use a configuration server, so that configuration servers will be all the repository changes and resource file changes will be taken care on that.
Mhm. You work on unit testing framework?
Yeah, unit testing I used JUnit Mockito I used. So
Oh.
Mockito framework I work mostly.
So what is difference between JUnit and Mockito?
JUnit is used for the simple validations which will be taken care of the your
Mm.
scenario, say like before, after, and then nullables or equals
Mm.
is these things. But in Mockito we will use the Mockito framework. So while you
Oh.
mock the data, that mock the data based
Oh.
on the JSON data also, you can directly you can mock in your resource file and you start the testing. Other is manually you can mock the data. So based on the other builders patterns we will follow as a factory and builders, and through that we will create a hard coded data in our Mockito. So we will mock the data and power mock the static data and all, and then we will perform the
Mm.
operations. So we'll have a multiple tools are there, like Sonar Cube, ELK, sorry, yes, the Sonar Cube, Eclima, Jococo. Through that we will test the static code analysis, code data, and then code coverage and all.
Okay, okay, it's fine. Okay. So, Amarjit, I'm good from my side. Do you have any questions?
No, thank you for that. I'm also good. Thanks. Nice
Yeah,
talking to you.
thanks for your time. Nice to talk to Amarjit, and our HR will get back to you
Sure.
regarding the
Yeah.
feedback.
Thank you.